Voters in Niagara Falls and Thornhill are going to the polls next month as by-elections in those ridings near. And joining us now with their views on the upcoming by-elections, 3 MPPs who all have their seats thanks to having won previous by-elections. Here are Mitzi Hunter, the Liberal MPP for Scarborough-Guildwood, Doug Holliday, the PC MPP for Etobicoke Lakeshore, and Catherine Fife, the New Democrat MPP for Kitchener-Waterloo. Who better to discuss by-elections than 3 people who got there that way? Thanks all for coming into TVO tonight. We just talked to Tim Hudak about his Million Jobs Act, and I want to start by having the 2 non-conservatives here fill in the following blank. Mitzi, to you first. Tim Hudak's Million Jobs Act actually won't work to create 1 million jobs because what?
Because it's designed, in fact, to reduce revenues and to cut services in Ontario, and that's the last thing that we need to strengthen Ontario's economy.
Catherine Fife, it won't create 1 million jobs because?
It's part and parcel of what the Liberals have already been trying over the last 10 years, cutting corporate taxes, and it hasn't proven to be effective. So really we see the Million Jobs plans, if you will, as really just a grandstanding pre-election jaunt. If Mr. Hudak was serious about getting anything done on the economy, he would have participated in the Parliament over the last 2 years during the budget process.
As you 3 did. You all are on the Finance Committee. You went all over the place. You have 2 people to convince here. Mr. Holliday, what do you say?
Well, I'd like to just relate something to you. Back when I was mayor of Etobicoke, we had the GTA Mayors and Chairs Committee, and we used to meet around the province. And one of the places we met one time was Oakville. And because they didn't have a room big enough at the City Hall, we met at the Ford plant. And we had the president of Ford address the group. And the president of Ford at that time, this was in the 1990s, told us that they were bidding to get a new line of work at the Ford plant that would employ 700 or 800 more people. But they were bidding against people around the world, like other Ford plants around the world, in order to get those jobs. But he told us what was needed to do that. You needed a government that was not totally labor-friendly, but a government that was fair to both sides. You needed a government that was trying to control its spending and its taxation, and that would create an environment where companies could make a profit. And that when they went to Detroit to bid on this new line, they'd have to show all these things in order to get it. And that led me to think, well, you know, if we just gone through the NDP having control of things, and Labour had a big say in everything, to the detriment of some of these companies, I just wondered how they were going to make out with getting these jobs. And
so your view is, had the NDP been in the government then, those jobs wouldn't have come?
They might not have. And what I'm saying is that Tim Hudak's plan, though, is simply to make it more conducive to employment and to people to want to work and run their businesses here in Ontario and create these jobs. And I think that can be done.
I'd just like to remind Mr. Holliday that was a long time ago, and the world has changed since the time he was the mayor of Etobicoke. What the province actually needs, and what is missing from Mr. Hudak's plan, is a global strategy which is open and transparent. You know, what we are hearing from businesses is they want infrastructure investment so they can move goods and services. They want to invest in research and innovation so they can commercialize the ideas and improve productivity in the province of Ontario. And they need energy prices to come down so that they can remain competitive. And that's an across-the-board plan. What Mr. Hudak is hiding from in his plan is the right-to-work ideas that quite honestly scare investments away. You do not attack the social infrastructure, which makes Ontario a good place to invest.
We did ask him about that here, and he said, I'm not hiding it. I can't get that through the legislature, so I'm not going to put that in this bill.
Well, it's chasing his own candidates away. Right?
One.
Oh, well, I mean, I think that when you see experienced MPPs who are choosing not to run under the leadership of Mr. Hudak, like Frank Cleese and Mr. Sherman, you see that those ideas don't have traction.
Okay, let me pick up on one of the things you said there and put it to Mitzi, which is energy prices. He feels if you can bring energy prices down, you'll do some good towards job creation. Do you think the Liberals are vulnerable on this energy pricing stuff, because it has been a hard sell for a lot of people for a long time?
Well, you know, under Mr. Hudak or really the Harris government, we saw an extremely vulnerable energy system in Ontario. And what we've done is invested in the energy system. So when you turn on the lights, they're there and they can turn on. And I think that that's important, that we continue to strengthen our energy system so that we have a system that we can count on in the future.
I appreciate that, because you know, your position has been, if I understand it, there's been a decade of sort of neglect of the energy infrastructure, and you guys felt you needed to come in and invest in it. Having said that, too many people think prices are too high right now, and it's your fault. So, is he onto something here?
I don't think he's on to anything at all in terms of the investments that we need to make in Ontario to ensure that we have the infrastructure in place that we can rely on, that we can have a stable economy to attract companies, to create jobs in Ontario. And our government has a track record in doing so. We are the government that has weathered through the recession and recovered all of the jobs, plus 65% more jobs. 435,000 jobs have been created. And we're creating a very strong economy where we have a strong middle class that we can ensure that there are opportunities for people in this province.
Doug Holliday, let me stay with energy prices for a second, because I know Tim Hudak's been beating this drum for a long time. But you got to figure, if there was a way to bring down the cost of electricity, someone would have figured it out by now, and no one's figured it out. So what magic bullet has he got that the rest of the parties haven't seen?
For starters, you could quit wasting the money, like we spent $1.1 billion to close gas plants that we didn't need. Now, the Liberals try to say, well, all parties were in agreement to remove those plants once they were there, or once they're under construction, and that might be true. But that wasn't the mistake. The mistake was putting them there in the first place. And then we have the green energy plan that's subsidizing to a great extent electrical power produced by wind and other sources. But it turns out to be power that in the end we can't use, and we're selling it off at bargain prices to our neighbors. All these things could be curtailed, and it doesn't have to be part of somebody's political philosophy to run the hydro. And Tim Hudak is saying that we can run this in a more efficient way, and we will.
But Tim Hudak is also fully committed to private power. Private power companies are in it to make a profit, and right now they're making a profit off the backs of Ontarians, off of you and I. Not only that, but we're selling that excess power to Michigan and New York, Quebec and Manitoba, and we are subsidizing those economies by offering them cheap energy. You know, you will not see the Liberals talking about energy. It wasn't even, I don't think it was even mentioned once in the fall economic forecast, because they want to distance themselves from the energy portfolio because it is a mess.
Well, they did bring out a whole new, I forget what they called it, a 5-year forecast on energy, and Bob Shirelli, the minister, was out there telling anybody who wanted to hear, here's what we see going forward. He wasn't hiding under a sheet on that stuff.
Well, no, I mean, but it wasn't in the it wasn't in the last budget. If you went through the last budget, I mean, I don't really think that they're very serious about revising the energy policy of this province, and they're not certainly attacking or targeting the manufacturing sector, which is really hurting because of the high energy costs.
Okay, let's talk about tax cuts. This has been a great debate in this province for a quarter of a century. Do tax cuts create jobs?
No.
Doug Holliday, do tax cuts create jobs?
I believe they do, and I go back to the Ford president, that if you've got an area where the taxation is favorable for people to be able to manufacture in your area and make a profit doing it, and hire people, which they'll pay taxes and keep the economy going and produce more jobs, that's the way the system works. It doesn't work by government taking taxes from one group and keep pouring it into other groups and hope that something comes of it.
Mitzi Hunter?
The reality is that we have one of the lowest tax jurisdictions, and we have a very favorable space for businesses to flourish. So it's very important that we're very responsible in this province, that we are ensuring that we continue to attract businesses and we continue to attract jobs, which is why we want to invest in people, ensuring that we have a strong education system so that we have the most talented people for those companies to hire. We also want to invest in our infrastructure so that we know that that is one of the things that's very important to companies as they're looking to invest, to grow, and to locate here. And that's what we are actually trying to do, is expand the infrastructure so we can keep up with and maintain the growth in this province.
Do tax cuts create jobs?
No, it's been proven they have not created jobs. And I actually actually, I wish that we had done the last show with Minister Hustings one day later, because, you know, Mr. Hustings sat exactly there and said, we have brought, you know, 50,000 jobs into this province, and the next day it was reported that we actually had lost 39,000. So, I mean, these job numbers, there's an ebb and flow to them, but what we know for sure is that tax cuts don't work. What the NDP supports, and which is more accountable, is targeted tax credits. So when you create jobs as a company, you get a tax credit. When you invest in research and innovation, you get a tax credit. When you invest in capital or training, you get tax credits. And companies want that transparency. They've told us that. It will be reflected in our policies going forward.
Why would that not be a preferable approach to just across-the-board tax cuts with no strings attached?
Well, I think that you can get tax cuts by being more efficient, and I know we can be more efficient. I know at the City of Toronto, everybody said, oh, well, we've reached the bottom. We couldn't possibly find any more savings, but when we had a consultant come in and show us where we could make those savings, and we got the majority of council to support most of the cuts, life went on and people haven't even noticed the difference. But Rob Ford's government down there has taken the operating budget from using $400 million worth of one-time funding, that's grants, surpluses, other found money that can't be repeated, down to $40 million. And that was through efficiencies and laying off redundant people and so on, contracting out the garbage.
Okay, but the question is about what works better to create a job? Just a blanket across-the-board tax cut, or something that's targeted to, you get a tax cut if you create a job? We know the latter is the NDP's position. I'm wondering why you think
it's
the
a
other
combination. I think that would be a combination. I think if you can actually target grants to job creation and make sure at the end that actually happens, and you get value for your grant, then that's one thing. But I think you have to create an atmosphere where people want to come to your jurisdiction to set up their company and to make their life.
It is an accountability thing too, and that's a big part right now, because people want to see where those tax dollars are going. I'm glad you brought up Rob Ford, because Rob Ford is saying that he saved the city $1 billion when those numbers are not real numbers. When it's targeted, you can follow the money. When you follow the money, you follow the policies
Even
of
the
any
Toronto
government.
Star thinks it's $650 million. So I mean, if it's not a, there is a big difference, but $650 million is still an awful lot, even when your opponents are saying it.
At the same time as you're cutting, you also have to make investments, and you have to make investments that are going to ensure that companies have the infrastructure in place that they need so that they can be productive. So it doesn't make sense that we cut taxes, cut services, lay off people, and then at the end of the day, we stall our economy. What's important is that we invest in our economy so that our economy has the confidence in place for businesses to continue to invest and to create jobs.
Let me follow up, though, with you on that, if I could, Mitzi Hunter, and that is, last night we did sort of the first of these two programs focusing on jobs, and we had a few pretty smart people here who pointed out that the Liberals have done everything business not everything, most things that business have wanted over the last 10 years. You cut the corporate tax, you harmonized the sales tax provincially with the federal goods and services tax. There is a much more competitive taxation environment in Ontario today than there was, and yet they both pointed out businesses aren't hiring. There's a lot of dead, quote unquote, dead money out there. Yeah. So have all of these tax changes amounted for naught? That's the question.
Yeah, and businesses need to invest, and they need to invest in their people, in training, in expansion, in equipment, and that's important for us to create those market conditions so that businesses have the confidence to make that investment. And when we talk to business leaders and to CEOs of small businesses and large corporations, they're feeling that confidence. They're feeling that the global economy, our neighbor to the south, the U.S. economy, the border communities, they're feeling that it is time to invest, it is time to grow and to expand. So I think that it's very important that we create the conditions, and our government has done that. We've recovered all the jobs since the recession. 435,000 jobs were created in Ontario, more than the U.S. or any other city.
Catherine Fife.
I just want to say that in many respects, we know that there's a confidence issue. I mean, all the parties know that there's a confidence issue. What undermines the confidence around investing manifesting in the province of Ontario is when the government starts to pick winners and losers, which they did, and that was the topic of our last show here, Steve.
Cisco.
So when businesses, small, medium, large corporations, they see the government sort of tapping one company or a sector on the shoulder and saying, okay, you know, you're special, that doesn't instill confidence in the economy. What the NDP is going to be putting forward in our platform is a comprehensive, holistic job creation strategy where companies know what the playing field is, if you will, because it needs to be leveled and energy has to be part of that conversation.
But let me ask Doug Holliday, do you believe after the corporate tax cuts, the harmonization of the goods and services tax and the retail sales tax, both of which business lobbied hard for and got, do you think Ontario's tax regime is still uncompetitive compared to our neighbors?
Yes, I think it is, and I think it's about to get more so. We heard a lot of comments from people throughout our travels around the province in the last couple of weeks on the budget about the revenue tools and 10 cents a litre on gas. People in the north saying, are you crazy? You can't do that to us. Our costs up here are already high enough. You're going to drive business out of here worse than ever. And you're talking about a pension plan. The government's talking about a pension plan where employers are supposed to contribute equal to the employee. That's another tax on those employers. Those employers are not going to stay here under those conditions. It's already tough enough for a lot of them to make ends meet, and the more pressure we put on them, the Liberals said they're creating an environment for employers, but they're certainly not by those measures.
Let's do one more thing here very briefly, and then I want to talk by-elections, and that is, whether you like it or don't, the Million Jobs Act is out there. It is a plan. The Conservatives would say, where's your plan? What's the answer?
We're executing on our plan every single day in Ontario, and we're ensuring that we keep jobs here in Ontario, that we grow an environment where small business entrepreneurs can flourish. We're investing in our educational system, which is essential for business confidence in terms of having the talent, and we're investing in our infrastructure to ensure that businesses have the environment in which that they can grow. So that's what we're doing, and in terms of the Million Jobs Plan, that's all about reducing revenues, cutting services, and really destabilizing the confidence that the workers have in
Catherine
Ontario.
Fife, where's the NDP plan?
Well, first of all, I mean, the HUDAC plan is not a plan, it's a bill. It's a private member's bill. And what I would say on that issue is that for 2 years, in the minority setting, the NDP have been able to ensure that priorities around job creation have come to the fore through the budget. I mean, just in the last budget, the youth and employment strategy, we forced the Liberals to put in a strategy and a wage subsidy to get youth the experience that they need to get jobs. We are addressing affordability and energy issues in a holistic way. Our plan is right now is to listen to the people of the province. I like my other colleagues here, I sit on the finance committee. Great ideas are coming from the small and business, small enterprises. We are listening to the chamber. We are looking at those minimum wages that nobody seems to want to talk about, but somehow that's going to have to get into the overall picture of the economy. And right now, I mean, when we sit in that legislature, we are holding a government accountable around job creation. We're not sitting on the sidelines like Mr. Hudak and the PC caucus. And when this private member's bill comes to the floor, if it has any right to work component of it, it's going to go. It's going to go nowhere.
They say it won't. Okay, let's move on. We've got about 5 minutes and change here to talk by-elections, something that all of you know something about. Thornhill, Niagara Falls, handicap the race. Where's it at right now, Mitzi Hunter?
Well, we feel very strong about our candidates in both communities. These are two women that understand their communities. They've been fighting for services in their communities over the last few decades. So this is an opportunity to elect strong local candidates in both Thornhill with Sandra Young-Rocco and in Niagara Falls with Joyce Morocco.
And if Joyce Morocco were to lose that seat for the Liberals, who have held that seat for 10 years, would that be a disaster for you guys?
You know, I was out with Joyce on the weekend, canvassing in the snow, and she is connecting with voters. She understands the issues. She understands that she's fighting for the middle class. She's fighting for jobs in the economy, and she's fighting to improve the health system in Niagara Falls.
Doug Holliday, handicap the race, if you would.
Well, I think that we can take both those seats. It would be important to do that, of course, but by-elections are strange things, and I don't think you can read a general election off a by-election. our friends here at the NDP are very good at bringing their paid union friends from all across the country to work in those by-elections. And the name of the game is to get people out on election day. And the more people you have working for you, the better you're going to do. And they've proven that. They've elected several of their members, all come through the by-election process. And that's because of that reason. And I still think we can do it.
I asked Tim Hudak about this, and I'll ask you as well. Yours, of the 7 by-elections that have happened since the 2011 election, yours is the only one out of 7 that the PC party won. And frankly, no one's given Tim Hudak credit for that. They're giving you credit for it because you're such a well-known person in that part of the province. If the Tories go 0 for 2 in February on these by-elections, what does it mean for Tim Hudak?
Oh, I think Tim Hudak will still continue to do what he's doing. He does it well. He's certainly the best performer in the House. He works hard. He's a smart guy. I think that the opposition try to portray him in a way that isn't true, but I think the public will see through this, and in the end, Tim will be the best premier we've had in the last 10 years.
So we're running a competitive campaign in Thornhill. Cindy Huckleberry is our second time running in that riding, and she knows the community incredibly well. People are looking at the NDP differently because we have a proven track record of working hard on the behalf of people in the last 2 years in the legislature. And in Niagara Falls, Wayne Gates has a very good chance of taking that riding because he's well known. He's earned the respect of the people in the community. Andrea Horvath is an incredibly popular and effective leader, and she's running a very disciplined, changed party in the province of Ontario. And just on the issue of this Labour, you know, Mr. Hudak came into the by-election after I won it in Kitchener-Waterloo, and he said 10,000 union bosses bought that riding. I'd like to set the record straight. The people of Kitchener-Waterloo were incredibly offended by that comment. It isn't union bosses that vote, it's the citizens in those ridings that vote.
You're not denying the teacher unions helped you win.
Teachers, but it was shoulder to shoulder with everybody in that riding because they didn't like the cynical level of politics. So you know, the PC caucus can talk their talk about Labour and involvement that way. What wins by-elections is just hard work.
Okay, let me ask you a very direct question.
Yeah.
If the NDP wins Niagara Falls,
Yes.
what impact would that have on your collective decision as a party to force an election in the spring?
Well, what we would take from a win in Niagara Falls is the same thing that we've done with the last 3, is that we take it as a sign of support from the people of this province, that they like the work that we're doing, and that we're going to continue to bring their priorities to Queen's Park. What we've made a commitment to do is to read the budget before we say no to it, and go from there.
I think that I want to speak to the whole by-election because I stepped into the space during a by-election, and it was really on the leadership of Kathleen Wynne, a very, very strong and determined and consistent premier who has a vision for this province. She actually has a plan that she's tabled and is moving Ontario forward. And I think that the people of Ontario see that, and the more that they experience our premier, the more that they will really see that she is the best leader for Ontario and has the plan to take our province forward.
If you go 0 for 2, though, in these by-elections, what will that say about the Premier's ability to govern and the possibility of your budget passing in the spring?
I think the Premier is doing an extraordinary job. Everyone that I speak to, from Northern Ontario into Southern Ontario and into the core of our city region, is talking about how Kathleen Wynne is a breath of fresh air, and she really understands and is a straight shooter. She understands the issues, and she also understands the solutions that we need in terms of investing in people, strengthening our infrastructure, and building a robust economy.
If you go 0 for 2, does all of that then, it's not the case, right? If you go 0 for 2, what you just said cannot be true.
By-elections are tough. We all know that. We've been through them. And, as I said on the night of my election, when I was standing with Kathleen Wynne, it's an opportunity for people to speak to the government and to let the government know where we need to go.
Steve.
Last 20 seconds
okay,
for Doug Holliday.
The fact is that Kathleen Wynne was part of the McGuinty government. McGuinty left town on a rail. And she should have gone with him, but she didn't. And with Andrea Horvath, in the morning she supports the Liberal government, and in the afternoon she criticizes them. She has no credibility whatsoever, and I think that the people of Ontario can see through both of these situations, and they're going to know that Tim Hudak is the guy to vote for.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's got to be the last word. I thank you all for coming in tonight. That was a strong finish. There we go. Okay. Mitzi Hunter from Scarborough-Guildwood, Doug Holliday from Etobicoke Lakeshore, Catherine Fife from Kitchener-Waterloo. They all know by-elections, and we'll watch and see what happens next month with interest.
Support Ontario's public television. Donate at tvo.org.